My 30M wife 28F found underwear under the couch that doesn't belong to her. My wife found underwear under the couch that isn't hers and I have absolutely no idea where it came from. We've had many female visitors and overnight guests and they all don't recognize the underwear. This is a completely anonymous post and I have no personal info on my profile, so believe me when I say I've never once cheated on my wife and have no idea where that underwear came from. She says she believes me, but I can feel her growing distant and she's started checking my phone while I'm asleep. What should I do? Redditors reactions. Tori 2 after. Redditor 1, is there anyone who maybe wants to cause drama? From a fake friend to a neighbor who agrees to feed your cats and then puts underwear there. People can be horrible. Under the couch also seems like a weird place for underwear to be. Like, if I drop my underwear when I undress, it rarely ends up under the couch, and if I then get back up, I notice if it would be gone because, well, I'd want to put it back on. Is there any chance that one of your guests had kids with them? From a teenage boy who's hiding the underwear of the girl he snuck into his parents' house to a girl who was dared to hide underwear of a friend's older sister somewhere, there's nothing that's not possible. Any pets? Some furry buddies are known to steal and then hide items from other people's laundry. Redditor follow-up, it's also a possibility that one of the female guests they've reached out to does recognize the underwear but is too embarrassed to tell the truth. Redditor 2, I once slept with my then boyfriend at a friend's house after a house party. My friend later asked a few of us if we recognized underwear she'd found under a bed. It was mine. I said no BC. I was embarrassed to admit we'd had time in someone else's bed, and the underwear was also really ugly, proper Bridget Jones granny pants. Now, I would be honest BC, I wouldn't be embarrassed about my underwear whatever it might look like, and I also now understand something like this can cause massive ripples. But at the time I didn't think that deeply about it. Perhaps it could be something similar? Redditor follow up, that's probably the real answer. I would say no too. Especially if 3 were the comfy pantalon. Redditor 3, honestly, even if a friend left their underwear there, they probably wouldn't admit to it, assuming it's not clean lol. Redditor follow up, yeah, I'd cop to it, but even as a person who almost never feels genuine embarrassment, having a friend send me a pic of my dirty underwear and be like, is this yours? And having to say yep, that's my dirty underwear, thank you, would feel real bad. I would make sure you contacted any men who stayed over solo, anyone who has had access to your house when you weren't their house sitter, neighbor with a key, whatever. If one of your guy friends was a shithead and binged someone on the couch while you were out of town or passed out in the next room, that's not great, but it ducking up your marriage is much, much worse. I might also follow up with the friends you messaged and just say, this is very embarrassing, and as I'm really trying not to put anyone in a weird position, but finding a pair of random women's underwear in our house and not being able to identify how they got there is really freaking wife out and me too, if this turns out to be some kind of ghost home invader underwear. I'm sending this request to all of our past houseguests in the hopes that, if there's any possibility that they were yours and the no, I've never seen those underwear before in my life was more of a yes, those are mine, but I think we'd all prefer to live in a world where this topic is dead and I never get a picture of my own dirty underwear from my friends again. I would really appreciate it if you could reach out to wife. This is very awkward, so I don't need a response to this message, and if they're legit not yours, please forget I sent this mortifying message. Story 2. My 58 meters partner 58F has become completely celibate due to a medical condition and associated depression. I love the hell out of this woman. What should I do? My wife has always had dark thoughts, but this has become worse over the last 4 or 5 years, especially since COVID. This dropped her libido to the point where we would have time once every month or two, with varying degrees of satisfaction for either of us. Almost 2 years ago, she developed medical issues which made time more uncomfortable for her, and she told me that she was celibate until this could be dealt with. There is no guarantee this will ever be dealt with, and even before this she was hesitant about time. I think it will be another year or two before anything changes, if at all, and honestly by then any hope of a time relationship will have sailed. Please understand that I love this woman, she is my best friend, we have a lifetime of experiences together. I truly believe that leaving her would hurt us both deeply, and in her case might trigger truly devastating consequences of her depression. She is absolutely not the sort to consider any sort of polyamorous or open relationship. Again, approaching her for this would, I truly believe, hurt her badly. We've talked around this. She sees herself as a failure as a wife. No amount of reassurance works. No expression of love seems to float her back to the top. And nothing changes. I have stopped trying because it just makes her more sad. And I hate that. She is very resistant to seeking psych help, based on the experiences of others in her family with similar affective issues. So what can I do? I can suck it up and switch off my S-time duality for good, right? Except that I am an athletic guy in my late 50s, women like me and seek me out, and I have tried that for the last 2 years and it is honestly driving me completely nuts. I don't want to be in a shoal about this, but I truly love S-time, and the intimacy and humor and care and compassion and sweat and giggles that go with it. I want to care for someone like that again. I want this badly enough that it is eating into my sleep. I am afraid that I am beginning to drink too much. Or, I can approach my wife about all this, stick the knife deep into her just when she is at her lowest. Leave her, and risk the depression getting the best of her. Tell her I am declaring our marriage open, and watch her leave me, with similar results. At the very best, leave her at home after she gives me permission, but in such a way that she would see herself as a true failure beyond any hope of redemption. Or, I can be a right-ducking bastard and cheat. With the attendant risks of getting caught out, and then all of the above consequences occurring anyway. Do I have the right to take that sort of risk with her health? This is my best friend, the mother of my child. I would do anything for her. Why can't I be man enough to do this? What should I do? Are there other options I can't see? I could use some help. Reddit. Redditor's reaction story 3 after. Redditor 1. My husband got prostate cancer, the early onset, fast-growing kind, and was one of the unlucky ones who did not get even some functionality back in that area afterwards. We had had a fun and intimate S-time life up until that point, and it took a while to find a new normal. Because when push came to shove, I loved the person far more than I wanted S-time. S-time is completely off the table for us and always will be, and it was okay to grieve for that part of the life we had. We found physical intimacy in other ways, and emotional intimacy in yet other ways. Massage, bathing together, just increased touch. We cuddle, we make time to talk about all kinds of things, we regularly date. You could try those? A large amount of people only ever get intimacy with S-time, and conflate the two. It's okay to want your wife to be mentally more healthy, it's okay to encourage that. It's also okay to try some couples therapy to help navigate a new normal. And, honestly, you need to decide if you want S-time more than you want your current relationship, and deciding that you do is okay too. But don't cheat end one relationship before entering another. Redditor follow-up. A large amount of people only ever get intimacy with S-time, and conflate the two. Long story, but a worst-case scenario when you don't value each other. My ex-husband was having issues with Ed due to Ms. before we knew it was MS. He had gone to the urologist and they didn't find anything wrong. I thought, talked about what we could do for each other. I was supportive, I thought he was dealing with it okay. Turns out, he got a prescription for Viagra and didn't tell me. He'd take a pill and then try to initiate S-time. So when I wasn't interested, he got really frustrated. This went on for over a year. I had no clue. I had actually thought we were getting better, but he was growing to resent me. When he got diagnosed with MS, we started couples therapy. Makes sense, right? Your SO gets diagnosed with a life-changing chronic illness. Couples therapy helps you work through the new normal. Well, what he wasn't telling me was that he hadn't been happy with our S-time life for years. That was why he wanted to go to therapy, not because of the MS but because he had come to resent me for all the things I didn't know I wasn't doing. But did we talk about S-time? Nope. It all came to a head when the therapist broke the news to me that my ex wanted to separate. We had only been married for 4 months. I was completely blindsided. He came home after work and yelled at me for what felt like forever. I hadn't given him enough BO jobs was the first thing he said to me in a very angry and scary tone. He never once mentioned the Viagra. I didn't find out until we split. We tried to get back together. I was clinging on to something I should have let go, but he was lying to me, the therapist, and telling his friend he didn't want to get back together, who then told me. He's now my friend and not my ex's, but saying he wanted to work things out in therapy. One of the last things our therapist asked us before we stopped going as a couple was what was the most valuable thing in a marriage. I said partnership and he said romance. Our therapist was not a good therapist for many reasons. I wish she had asked this at the start. My ex's response made me realize that we never saw anything on the same page. He was masking our entire relationship, and he couldn't maintain the charade and maintain his Ms. It ducked me up, to say the least. Sharing the story on Reddit is actually part of my therapy. If I can help one person or connect with someone else who went through something this crazy, I feel a little better. It also prevents me from talking about it IRL. Redditor 2, Hi Op, Do you guys fool around in manners in which penetrative S-time isn't even on the table? As someone that has vaginismus and pelvic floor issues and struggles with penetrative S-time and also sometimes feels like a failure as a partner, my guy and I have still found intimate workarounds and ways to stay passionate even if it's not PIV. I think you can gently communicate to your partner that some kind of shared S-time intimacy is important for you, and maybe come up with a list of activities she'd be comfortable with even if PIV isn't on the table. Naked massages, naked cuddling without S-time escalation, outer course, mutual masturbation, kissing you while you touch yourself, etc. I think you can frame it as I miss sharing this kind of intimacy with you instead of just what about my DCK though? I used to cry during BJs because somehow in my brain it didn't feel like enough, and it reminded me of what I wasn't able to provide in comparison to normal relationships. I can understand your partner's feelings of inadequacy. That being said, seeing my partner still have fun and be giggly and satisfied after we'd fool around was and is so healing for me, knowing that things are still fun for him and aren't disappointing even if things aren't full on PIV. It's unfortunate that your partner is against therapy because it sounds like she could benefit from reframing her feelings about S-time as well as further processing her depression. Redditor 3, whatever you decide to do, talk to your wife about it first. Yes, it might hurt her feelings. Yes, it might lead to a different outcome than you would prefer. But it's unfair for you to decide that she can't handle a difficult conversation and just declare the relationship open, or cheat. Give her the gift of honesty and self-determination. Instead of deciding on her behalf that she is too fragile for head-on confrontation, tell her that you need to have a serious conversation. Try to go into it with an open mind. I love you so much, but I can't commit to being celibate with you for an undetermined amount of time. Ask her if she has any possible solutions. She might. If the conversation spins out of control, ask her if you can at least go to couples counseling to have someone there to mediate. Your wife fundamentally changed the nature of your relationship when she declared that she would be celibate with no end date. She's allowed to do that, but you are allowed to respond to that. She can say that she never wants to have S-time again, and you can say I am not ready to give S-time up forever. Redditor follow-up, this needs to be higher. People acting like OP can just substitute S-time for cuddles and therapy are completely unrealistic, especially since he outlined just how much a S-timeless relationship was not working for him at all. That's just a recipe for resentment to build. She changed the terms of the relationship, she ought to be able to handle a conversation about that. Story 3, should I keep telling my best friend about her cheating husband every time or should I just cut it out until she sees it? IF 26 work in a building that is one of those one-way glass windows and looks out to a nice secluded park. A couple of years back I noticed my childhood best friend F, 27's husband 29 intimate with another woman Rose, 27. A few days after seeing them again I told Z in case it wasn't something they'd agreed upon. Knowing her, it probably isn't. She has always been quite possessive towards him. Z ended up moving back interstate to her family home for a year to keep some distance and get some clarity. The relationship survived and she moved back and apparently they are stronger than ever. Had their third child recently. A couple of months after she gave birth January 2022, I surprisingly heard through my brother who runs in the same circles that the husband has been seeing Rose for the past 4 years. Their friends talk about how he even reaches out to them for favors for her shamelessly. I didn't want to interfere as Z was going through a lot with the baby and I thought it wasn't my place. This past month though I began seeing the husband and Rose around in public at night. Z doesn't go out much at night especially with the babies unless it's their date nights. She is used to him hanging out with the boys on weekends but he denies going to bars and clubs which I've seen him in multiple times. When Rose started showing up with him, I began telling Z who would always make excuses as to why it's not true. Today is the 5th time I confront her with facts and for the first time I have a photo of them having a dinner date. Later that day she calls me to make light of the story as he had fully convinced her it's a work dinner. I have seen him intimate with Rose at least 3 times but Z would say I probably misunderstood the situation or have the wrong guy. She is constantly telling me she is waiting for him to cheat again so she can leave their boring life but also that she's sure he isn't cheating because a wife would know, she would just sense it. Should I keep pushing the facts or wait until she sees them on her own? I worry this would affect our friendship because of how much she can't reconcile with or recognize reality. How should I move forward with this in consideration of all ends? Names were altered. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, I would put the question back to her. Something along the lines of, hey, so I have more info about your husband and Rose. Do you want to keep hearing about this stuff? You seem pretty convinced they are not cheating and it's fairly awkward to bring up. Do you want me to stop? That way, if she asks you to stop, your conscience can be clear. Or if she still wants to know, you can just forward the images or info you get without additional commentary. It sounds like she knows, she's just living in deliberate denial. You can't save people from themselves, so I would try to emotionally detach from the situation. Redditor follow up, this is a great way to deal with it, up. I think the only thing I'd add is that you don't owe it to your friend. She's had ample evidence and time, her actions speak louder than her words. I've had friends who kept going back to horrible partners or spouses and, after a while, it's genuinely painful. If this is too frustrating or emotional for you, then I think you should drop it for your own sake. Redditor 2, time to leave it alone. She is choosing to remain in denial for her own reasons. Redditor 3, you've tried your best. I would drop it until she realized herself.